Welcome to the Executive Protection and Secure Transportation Podcast. The podcast is provided by the International Security Driver Association. Every week, we share secure transportation and executive protection headlines, news, trends, and educational content for today's practitioners. Now, here's your host, Larry Snow.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the EPST podcast. Well, this Sunday, May 29th, in the United States will be the 106th running of the Indy 500. So we thought we would apply the science of driving to the Indy 500 and do a simple analysis of the track and the drivers. Hopefully it will make watching the race more enjoyable. We'll start off by taking a look at track dimensions. The Indy track is 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers in length. The track consists of 2 long straights that are each 3,300 feet or 1,005.8 meters in length. 2 short straights that are 660 feet or 20.2 meters long. 4 corners that are 320 feet long or 402.3 meters long. Looking at those numbers, an Indy driver will spend 40% of their time in a turn. Over the last decade, during the race, the average straightaway speeds are approximately 225 miles per hour or 362 kilometers per hour. This year, during qualifying runs, some of the drivers reached 240 miles per hour or 386.2 kilometers per hour on the long straightaways, which is very impressive. When looking at the average speed for the entire race, is lower than 225 miles per hour or 362 kilometers per hour due to pit stops. For the podcast episode, for the sake of easy math, we will lower that max speed number down to a boring 220 miles per hour or 354 kilometers per hour, which is 323.4 feet in a second or 98 meters per second, more than the length of a U.S. football field in a second. When you consider that blinking your eyes takes 0.2 seconds, the vehicle and the driver will have traveled 64.6 feet or 19.6 meters in that blink of an eye. At 220 miles per hour, 354 kilometers per hour, it would take the vehicle 10.2 seconds to go the length of that long straight, 2.04 seconds to travel the short straight, and 4.1 seconds in each corner. Pit stops. Throughout the history of the Indy 500, the winner has often been decided by what happens off the track and during pit stops. So how vital are pit stops? If the average speed is 220 miles per hour or 354 kilometers per hour, for every second spent in the pit, the driver will give up 323 feet or 98 meters of track space. If the pit stop takes 5 seconds, that will give up half a straightaway of distance. This means that if 2 drivers enter the pit simultaneously and one leaves the pit a half second quicker, that driver gains 162 feet or 49 meters of distance on the other. Looking at those numbers, you can understand why the teams spend a great deal of time practicing pit stops. When watching the race, you can also understand why the TV crew spends considerable time broadcasting and explaining what is happening during the pit stops. Let's talk about corners. Depending on the vehicle's path and speed, the car will produce approximately 3.8 Gs pushing on the center of gravity. That means there is 3.8 times the vehicle's weight pushing on the vehicle away from the corner and towards the wall. Also, 4 times a lap, there is 3.8 times the weight of the driver pushing on the driver. If a driver weighs 175 pounds, 79 kilograms, there will be 665 pounds or 301 kilograms pushing on their neck 4 times a lap. So let's explain this a little bit. So every time they drive through a corner, the path of the vehicle creates an arc with a given radius. The arc is created by the amount the driver moves the steering wheel. You will hear the announcer sometimes call the arc or the line the driver is taking through the corner. The driver's speed, where and how much they move the steering wheel will determine, quote-unquote, their line, which determines if they make it through the corner, spin the vehicle, hit the wall, or both. The driver will make the decision of where and when to move the steering wheel and at what speed 800 times, which is the 200 laps. Old Scotty School and in the present Vehicle Dynamic Institute students are familiar with the phrase, the driver's equation. Even at Indy, it's all about the driver's equation. The less the driver moves the steering wheel, the bigger the radius. The bigger the radius, the faster the driver can move through the 4 Indy corners. The faster the driver moves through those corners, the higher the force pushing on the race car's center of gravity. With too much force, the driver will lose control. Too little, they are not maximizing the vehicle's capability and will lose track position. There are some differences between the student and the IndyCar driver working the driver's equation. Depending on the exercise, the student is moving approximately 40 to 60 miles per hour or 64 to 96 kilometers per hour, and the Indy driver is moving 225 miles per hour or 362 kilometers per hour. Also, if the students mess up the driver's equation, they hit a cone. If the Indy driver makes a mistake calculating the driver's equation, they hit a wall at around 200 miles per hour. If the Indy driver manages the driver's equations better than the other drivers and combines that with great pit stops, they take home around $2 million. If the student does a good job of using the equation, they get a certificate. You'll sometimes hear the race commentators talk about push and loose, which refers to understeer and oversteer. Understeer, the push, is the condition where the front tires lose adhesion while the rear tires remain in contact with the pavement. The car tends to travel straight ahead even though the driver is turning the wheel. Too much understeer results in hitting the wall. Oversteer, the loose, is the condition where the rear tires lose adhesion while the front tires remain in contact with the pavement. The car's back end will slide out. Actually, snap out is a better explanation. To get a clear understanding of understeer and oversteer, a basic discussion of the laws of physics is required. Don't worry, we'll keep this high level. When the driver turns the steering wheel, there is an energy pushing on the race car's center of gravity. The amount of energy, measured in G's or pounds or kilograms, is determined by how much the driver moves the steering wheel and how fast they are traveling. The more speed and the more steering, the more energy is pushing on the vehicle. Remember from high school, for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction? So if there's a force pushing on the center of gravity of the race car, there has to be an equal and opposite force pushing back. That force pushing back is created by the friction the tires make with the track. The average Indy car weighs 1,600 pounds or 725 kilograms. If the Indy car is driven around a corner that creates 1,600 pounds or 725 kilograms pushing on the center of gravity of the vehicle, that would be 1 G pushing on the center of gravity of the vehicle. The tires will be pushing back 800 pounds or 363 kilograms front and rear. In the perfect world, this would be called neutral steering. As I mentioned earlier, the Indy car can produce up to 3.8 Gs. At 3.8 Gs, there would be 6,080 pounds or 2,759 kilograms pushing on the car's center of gravity, which would mean that both the front tires and rear tires would have to push back with 3,040 pounds or 1,379 kilograms to keep the car balanced. You may also hear the announcers talk about the vehicle changing from understeer to oversteer or vice versa as the car is moving through the corner. The drive will be in a 320-foot turn or 399 meters for about 4 seconds at the rate of 220 miles per hour or 354 kilometers per hour, which is 323.4 feet or 98 meters in a second. All while the rear tires are breaking loose, oversteer, or the front tires are losing adhesion, understeer. If the vehicle oversteers, the rear of the vehicle will more than likely hit the wall. If the vehicle understeers, it is likely that the front of the car hits the wall. With oversteer, a small movement of the steering creates a big movement in the rear of the race car. With understeer, the driver moves the steering wheel and the vehicle is not turning and traveling at 220 miles per hour at 354 kilometers and heads towards the wall. A phrase often heard in the old Scotty School and the present-day Vehicle Dynamics Institute's training programs is that small changes in speed produce big and dramatic changes in the vehicle's behavior. As the driver moves through the corner, a small change in throttle position or steering wheel angle can produce devastating results. A change of 10% in speed produces close to 20% change in the force pushing on the vehicle's center of gravity. All this is happening at 220 miles per hour or 354 kilometers per hour. That's why drivers need to be the best of the best. With the advent of cameras in the vehicle, you can look at the driver's hands. There should be one steering wheel movement when entering the turn. If their hands are moving while in the corner, they are trying to balance the car, and nothing good will happen. You may also hear the announcer or the commentator say that the driver is chasing the balance. What that means is, with their hands on the steering wheel and their foot on the gas pedal, they're controlling the amount of force pushing on the race car's center of gravity and the force pushing back. With too much force, they can lose control. With too little, they're giving up speed and track position. From a driving standpoint, what is hard to do and considered by many to be a dangerous characteristic is a vehicle that goes quickly from understeer to oversteer or vice versa. You hear it often when watching an Indy event. You will hear commentators say that the car was a push understeer, entering the corner, and loose oversteer, coming out. This condition is one of the very few that will cause an Indy driver to slow down. So what about an Indy car through a slalom course? For those of you who have attended a Scotty School in the past or a Vehicle Dynamics Institute program in the present, a good reference point for this discussion would be the slalom course. Those former students are all familiar with the 80% requirement. The 80% requirement that others claim as theirs or as an international standard is not accurate. If you're interested in where the origin of the 80% standard was actually derived, we suggest taking a look at a link supplied in the show notes for this podcast episode. So what would the numbers be if you were to drive an Indy car through a slalom? What numbers would you need to reach the 80% requirement? Using 100% of the 3.8 Gs of the Indy car's capability would produce a speed of 83 miles per hour or 134 kilometers per hour. To achieve the 80% goals, you need to drive through the Scotty School and the VDI slalom at 74 miles per hour or 119 kilometers per hour. Also, considering at 74 miles per hour or 119 kilometers per hour, you would be moving at 109 feet per second or 34 meters per second. You would have about 0.6 seconds from cone to cone. The difference between using 100% to 80% is 23 miles per hour or 34 feet per second or 37 kilometers per hour or 10 meters per second. Those who have achieved 80% in the slalom know the skill level required to accomplish that. That'll do it for me this week. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great weekend. Just a reminder, it is Memorial Day on Monday in the United States, not a day of celebration, but one of remembrance to honor those U.S. servicemen and women who have died serving our country, protecting our nation and our freedoms. If you do have an interest in going much deeper into this type of topic, I invite you to check out the International Security Driver Association's website and consider joining the only organization dedicated to supporting the advancement of professional security drivers and other protection practitioners with data-driven research and other professional development tools. For more information on all the member benefits, head on over to isdacenter.org.